Everybody, I'm back. It's David Mark. I'm from Temple Shalom in Pompano Beach, and I'm stuck in the house the same as everyone else. I'm uh, doing some work. I also teach English at Kaiser University, and I have a class at 6:30. And I spoke with a colleague, and he's way up in Rochester. Don't know what the weather is like up there. But right now, I'm speaking to you, and you, frankly, are the most important person in our universe because we have this human connection. It's a little peculiar because of the technology involved, but nonetheless, well, I'll give you an example. This was a story by Martin Buber, and Martin Buber was a ferocious Jewish philosopher. He was not a religious person, but he was fascinated by Hasidism. And he said if you had asked him when he was younger what he preferred, people or books, well, you tell me, what's your preference? Okay, well, time's up. You can't have dead air in this business. The point is that when he was younger, he appreciated the company of books because books give you no aggravation. Books are always there. You take down a book from the shelf when you're feeling sad or depressed or just bored, and in 2 minutes you are transported to another world, a world of fiction, where you can break the connection in 2 seconds simply by closing the book. People aren't like that. People come round. People are always asking you for things, and sometimes they're family, sometimes they're friends. But this is the price we pay for being human. So that was Buber's theory. When he was younger, he would have preferred books. When he was older, as he said, people are the brown bread of life on which he breaks his teeth. Ah, these tousle-headed good-for-nothings. How I love them. I suppose it sounds a little better in High German, but otherwise, here we are. And I wanted to speak to you today about the eternal light. Now, we all know what this is. It's something in the temple, certainly, although ironically, and this is a personal story, growing up as I did on the Lower East Side of New York City, which at the time was one of the most Jewish neighborhoods in the world. This was back in the 60s mostly. And my shul had no eternal light. The rabbi was a ferocious fundraiser. That was his particular claim to fame. He was not a teacher. He was not a great speaker, but my goodness, he could extract money from people's pockets. Well, we had no eternal light. Apparently, he didn't have anyone to hit up for that particular item. There, now I took off my glasses. We don't have to look at the blue glare. And one day, the story goes, the fire inspector came into the shul. And when a fireman sees a red bulb, wherever it is, over the arc or whatever it was, his first reaction is that a fire exit? And he put the same question to the rabbi. And the rabbi looked at it, and the rabbi looked at him and said, definitely. So later on, as it turns out, he was able to get someone to donate money for the eternal light, and we ended up with a pretty handsome looking one. I've seen all different kinds. I'm sure you have it all as well. We have a very nice one in the chapel at the shul. I guess I'm selling it to you. But my point is this. What does the eternal light represent? Hands? Okay. No, I see the person in the back. Yes, you are 101% correct. It represents the menorah. The menorah, not the Chanukiah, not the Hanukkah menorah, but rather the seven-branched candlestick. And why is seven a sacred number? Well, how many times do we wrap the tefillin around our arms? 7. How many days in the week? 7. How many planets were visible in ancient times? 7. And what floor in the apartment house did I grow up on? The rabbi. I wasn't a rabbi then. I was just a normal person. 7. So you see, 7 is a sacred number. 7 is also the number of the sfirot, which are closest to us in Kabbalah. So they convey our prayers to God, and whether, of course, they are separate from God or part of God's garments, we will never really know. It's metaphorical. But talking about the eternal light, the most simple explanation is that just as the eternal light is the only flame or light visible when all the lights are turned off in the sanctuary, it represents the spirit of humanity, which can never be stifled, regardless of what may happen, such as, for example, the health emergency in which we find ourselves. However, when we think about the eternal light, obviously the thing is electric. I'll never forget all the generations of Hebrew school children who said to me, Rabbi, if there's a blackout, does the eternal light go out? And I would say, yes, I'm sorry it does. And they always look disappointed. And I frankly don't blame them, because we would like to think of something that is eternal and forever and always with us. Well, I have one for you. Here it is. It's the idea of flame. Now, I'm not one of those candle lighting people. I have a great fear of fire, but just for the moment, humor me. Let's talk about candle flame. Now, Kabbalistically, and other rabbis are aware of this as well, we all seem to work from the same playbook, the idea of the flame. Now visualize it, because clearly I'm not going to ask you to go striking matches while you're sitting at the computer. Instead, you have the brown flames at the base of the wick. Above that, you have the blue. And finally, you have the yellow. The flame reaches upward all of our lives. We yearn to unite with God. We do not wish to, God forbid, pass away. We do not wish to shuffle off this mortal coil, as Shakespeare tells us, but we do wish to be reunited with God. Not a theophany, that's God on Mount Sinai, but an epiphany, when we recognize God in our lives, when we see and we realize there is nothing we are capable of doing. Yes, I know we have free will, but even so, unless God is with us. And I take that idea very seriously. There are rabbis who don't believe in God. There are rabbis who doubt God, which is fine. We are human beings. We have minds. We have brains. I'll never forget, this was in my first pulpit in Fayetteville, North Carolina. There I was on the main drag, Morganton Road, in the heat of the day, and the traffic was unbearable, at least 6 or 7 cars besides mine. And right in front of me, as though God had planned it, certain things happen. They're beshared. We know beshared. Yes, that means destiny. Was a pickup, and it was red, had to be red. And the back of the pickup, the back of the cab, had, of course, a gun rack, which was fully stocked. And on the rear bumper, where I had plenty of time to read it as we moved our way through traffic, two bumper stickers. One of them said, "In the event of rapture, car will be driverless." And the second one said, "God said it, I believe it, that settles it." Sure, singing, give yourself a lobotomy for God. Go ahead, why not? No. I'm very proud that, having attended Yeshiva University, the motto, which I never forgot, certainly I've forgotten a lot of the other things they taught me, but Torah Umada. Torah is, of course, divine law for us Jews and fellow travelers. Mada means knowledge, secular knowledge, a profession, the idea of knowing how to get around in this world. It's not necessarily Bina. Bina is different. Bina is being a maven. I remember back in the late 60s, there was a series of radio commercials. Some of them had Stiller and Mira working that way, but it was the herring maven, because people know different things. Everybody is an expert at something. My dog is an expert at sleeping and barking, as I'm sure yours are. And the herring maven, his claim to fame was that, and he did radio commercials for the Vita Herring Company. I'm not pumping for them. I don't even know if they're still in business. But anyway, he knew how to distinguish among the different types of herring. And he always ended the commercial with, "Make your day a little bit brighter, eat a little pickled herring by Vita." So you see, it will certainly fix you. All right, there's even a story. Let me tell one quick herring story. What happens is a Jew is riding on a train, and through some strange machination of the universe or the conductor, he is sitting opposite a highly bemedaled general of the Imperial Russian Army. And they're just riding along, and the Jew undoubtedly has a book to read, and the general doesn't want to do anything intellectual, so he's looking out the window, and then his eye lights upon the Jew, and he says to him, "Jew," he says, isn't it great? We were friends with everybody. In 2 minutes, we're their bosom buddy. And the Jewish fellow puts down his book and says, "Yes," and gives him a smile. He says, "Why are you Jews so smart?" And the Jew thinks for a second. He says, "It's because we eat a lot of herring." And the general says, "Herring?" He says, "Do you have any herring?" He says, yes, yes, I have some herring. And he says, I want to buy some of your herring. And the Jew reaches into his coat, which in my mind is not a good place to carry herring, but you never know. And he says, holds it out to the general. The general says, well, I'm not going to take it. How much would you like? And the Jew says, 20 rubles, which is an astonishing amount of money in those days. Wow, a few kopecks would buy you all the herring you wanted. And the man says, well, sure. And he gives him the 20 kopecks, the 20 rubles, and he gets the herring. And then the general starts eating his herring. And of course, herring is a challenge, always, especially with onions. And after a while, the general says, you know, he says, I paid you 20 rubles for this herring. He says, I could have gotten just as much herring for 5 kopecks in the marketplace at Kiev. And the Jew says, you see, you're becoming smarter already. So that's my herring story. Let's go back to the candle flame. There are 2 souls. There is the nefesh and there is the neshama, or the neshama, if you went to one of those high-toned Jewish camps. He says, well, the nefesh is the animal soul. The nefesh is the animal soul. We get up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we do our business, we get dressed, we go eat breakfast, and we're, well, under normal circumstances, we would have been out the door and on our way, but right now we're probably going from the upstairs to the downstairs or from the bedroom to the kitchen to the living room. And that is the nefesh. The nefesh is the animal soul. The animal soul lasts only for as long as we live. And it propels us. It is the battery of our existence. It keeps us going. But the neshama, the neshama, the neshama, the Yiddish neshama in particular. And I don't disavow that there are plenty of folks who aren't members of the tribe, and they have a neshama too. It's just wired a little differently, but the ultimate purpose is the same. The neshama is like a wave. It's part of the ocean. And when we die, the wave goes back to the ocean. But the wave is not diminished for being in the ocean, and the ocean is not diminished for being part of the wave. And the ocean is God, and we are the wave. Now, whether you believe, and it's becoming more attractive to me as the years go on, the idea of reincarnation, that's fine. Of course, you'll have absolutely no memory of who you were in this life or who you'll be in the coming life. But nonetheless, you do go on in some way, shape, or form. That is Kabbalah. Kabbalah is sort of like one thread. If you look at Judaism as a mighty cable, meaning we've got Talmudic Judaism, Hasidic Judaism, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox Judaism, although there are very slight differences among them theologically. If you follow mainstream Judaism, there are all sorts of stories. I'll never forget, years ago, I had a very good friend, I hope he's still around, who was an American Baptist minister. This was up in New England. And New Englanders take their religion very seriously. Not as seriously as Southerners, but that's a sociological thing. And he explained to me once that if you go to a minister and ask them a theological question, they will give you a theological answer. If you go to a rabbi, she will tell you a story. So, as far as whether the neshama begins or ends, it's a story. Here comes a story. Apparently, under God's throne is an Otsar HaNeshamot, that is a treasure house of souls. And when the treasure house, every time a baby is born, an angel gets to give them a soul. I'm not going to ring bells or anything. This isn't that sort of angel. And the baby is born with a soul. There you go. You can't find the soul. I know back in the days of Michelangelo, when they were doing dissections of everything, they looked for the soul, and oddly enough, it wasn't there. But when that treasure house of souls is emptied out, Mashiach will come. Now, on the face of it, why? That doesn't seem to make sense. There are 2 requirements for Mashiach to come. Either the world observes, well, 3 requirements. Either the world observes 2 Shabbosim in a row, 2 Shabbatot in a row, exactly the way they're supposed to be done, or the situation gets so bad, so absolutely horrific, that God has no choice but to send Mashiach to straighten things out. Well, again, you can take those stories with howsoever many grains of salt as you wish, because we've already, many of us, witnessed, and the rest of us have read about the most horrific episodes to befall humanity. And Mashiach still is not here. And finally, as far as observing 2 Shabbatot in a row properly, tell me what properly means. Because there's the other rule. No matter how religious you are, there's a Jew in the next county, or the next state, or the next block who's more religious than you. There's no getting around it. And even if he isn't more religious than you, he'll tell you he is. So we don't exactly know what to do about that. Besides which, I'll tell you my honest opinion. When Mashiach comes, even if she is the most talented human being who ever lived, and even if she has an enormous computer with a modem that goes from here to there, I seriously doubt whether she'll be able to straighten everything out herself. And don't forget, this is the Jewish Mashiach. I mean, the Christians have their own Messiah, and I respect him a great deal. I can't worship him because for one Jew to worship another Jew doesn't really make sense. We go right to the top. And that's why we have to help Mashiach. We have to bring Mashiach. And we do that by making our corner of the world a little more peaceful, a little more healthful, a little more copacetic. I don't know if anybody's used that since the 1920s. But I truly believe that with all my heart and my soul. And I strive to be optimistic. We must be optimistic. Gam zu yavor. Well, let's tell the story about that. Solomon, the wisest of men. Well, frankly, if he were that wise, he wouldn't have married so many women. That's not a chauvinistic statement. That's merely an observation of fact. And Solomon, being the wisest of men, he called in the royal jeweler one fine day. And he said, I have a task for you, jeweler. And the jeweler said, I yearn to wait on your majesty. He said, I want you to carve me a ring. Easy enough, says the jeweler. And on this ring, I want you to carve a sentence which in good times will remind me to prepare for the bad times to come. And in bad times will remind me that good times will be coming as well. And the jeweler went away, and he thought and thought and thought. And he came back with a ring and placed it on the royal finger. And the king said, it's beautiful, it sparkles. What does it say? The jeweler said, take a look. And Solomon took off the ring, and inside the ring was carved, Gam zu yavor. This too shall pass. That's one Solomon story. There's always another Solomon story. The other Solomon story I like is when he had this gorgeous, gorgeous diamond, and being Solomon, of course, it was Tiffany's and Sotheby's and all the other bees put together. And then, although I can't quite understand how this happened, he was admiring the diamond one day, and he saw a terrible scratch had appeared on the top facet. So again, he calls in the royal jeweler. And he says, look at this, can you fix it? And the jeweler says, Majesty, I will do my best. And he goes away, and he takes care of it, and he brings it back. And he appears one day in the back of the throne room, waiting his turn, and the king sees him and says, oh, jeweler, make way, let him come forward. And the jeweler shows him the diamond. And the king sees that the scratch is still there, but the jeweler has used that as the stem for a beautiful, beautiful rose that he carved into it. I want to thank you all for attending, and I hope to be able to speak with you again. God bless you all, and be careful. Thank you.